As you know, modal interchange is the process of borrowing chords from parallel scales. There's a list on page 54 and 55 of the text which gives a good picture of all the modal interchange scales that are commonly borrowed from. Make sure you do all the reading so that you understand the extra material that's now being introduced in Harmony 4. For example, we are now exploring not only modal interchange from parallel minor scales, but also from parallel major scales, and also from in a minor key borrowing from parallel major scales. So there's many more chords to consider. Once you get a thorough idea of all the chords possible, you'll also start to notice that some of them are borrowed much more frequently than others. The other thing that we need to start learning, which is new to this course, is the concept of modal source, understanding where a particular chord comes from and how that influences the chord scale and available tensions. Take a minute to look at this chart and notice, for example, how many scales have the chord 5 minor 7 in them. So after looking through the chart, hopefully you've noticed that there's 3 scales in this collection of scales that have 5 minor 7. So the question is, how do we know the modal source? How do we know which scale the 5 minor 7 is coming from? And that's what the next part of this video is about, is how to figure modal source. As you can see, we have a lot of modal interchange chords. Let's take the first one that appears, 5 minor 7, the one we were just talking about. We have 3 possible modal sources for that. The way to figure the modal source is to use your existing knowledge of chord scales. So we've talked about, for example, some statements that you can use as ways to help memorize them. One of them was that in a major key, all non-diatonic minor 7 chords take dorian. Okay, so how do we figure out the modal source? Well, we use our knowledge of chord scales. We know that non-diatonic minor 7 chords take dorian. So what we do is we write a dorian chord scale, as I've done here. And then we take those notes and we rewrite them starting on the root of the key that we're in this case A. So I've written the notes starting on A. Same exact pitches as we're here. Restarted, rewritten, starting on A. And you can see from the labeling and the intervals that it's in fact turns out to be an A mixolydian scale. And the A mixolydian, that means, is the source of this chord scale. The chord scale, E dorian, comes from, this 5 minor 7 chord is coming from A mixolydian, not one of the other chord scales that has dorian in it. I mean, that has a 5 minor chord in it, like dorian or aeolian. Okay, so again, the process is figure out what, analyze the piece of music, figure out what the chord scale for a given chord is, write that chord scale, rewrite that chord scale starting on the root of the key that you're in, and figure out what that new scale is. That will be the modal source. Let's do it with one more chord. Here's a G major 7, flat 7 major 7. If you need to, look on the chart, but you'll see that flat 7 major 7 can potentially come from more than one scale. Look at all the possibilities. One of them is mixolydian. Another one is dorian. Look at all the possibilities, and then now it's time to figure out, well, where does this G major 7, where does flat 7 major 7 come from when we're bringing it into a major key? And the way to do it again is write out the notes of the chord scale. What is the chord scale for flat 7 major 7? And hopefully you quickly know that it's Lydian, because all non-diatonic major 7 chords take Lydian. So then you write out the notes for G Lydian right here under the chord scale. And don't forget, because of the key signature, there has to be a G natural. You write out all the notes. Then you literally take those notes, which I am now going to do, and put them here. And then I reorder them so that they start on A, which means I have to get rid of this G temporarily. Now I'm starting on A. I put my G up here, make it a G natural, and now I have the correct notes. I have the source note, the source scale for that. Flat 7, major 7, oops. And hopefully you can tell by ear and by analysis that that is an A Mixolydian scale. So flat 7, major 7, in this case the modal source for it is A Mixolydian. That's the process. Now practice on your own. Again, analyze, figure out what the chord Roman numeral is, figure out what the chord scale is, write the chord scale, rewrite the chord scale notes starting on the root of the key you're in, figure out that key scale, and then you will know what the modal source is.